Well guys, we finally made it to the final part of the series. While it's been interesting for me to learn new stories, I have to say, some are darker than others. In this part especially, things take a pretty sinister turn, so friendly reminder, be cautious of your consumption. Anyways, in this video we're going to go over the remaining teams on the list, and keep in mind that, again, for some, there wasn't a substantial story, so we'll be skipping a few. And with that, here is part 4 of each NHL team's worst scandal to date. If you were able to catch part 1 of this series, or you've been a hockey fan for long enough, then you'll know about the Kyle Beach situation. And while Beach was an adult when the travesty that was Brad Aldridge entered his life, the unnamed victim that came forward in this case hadn't even begun to shave yet. In 2013, the kid we'll refer to as John Doe joined the San Jose Sharks junior team. And in case you aren't aware, the Sharks are affiliated with multiple AAA teams under the Tier 1 distinction. And aside from that, offers a variety of developmental courses where kids as young as 4 can join. The reason why this context is important is because John Doe recalled that he first became involved through the organization at age 5. And for a while, things went along just fine for him, until he was 12 years old, and joined the team that happened to be coached by Kevin Whitmer. And after undergoing some horrific treatment at the hands of his coach, John Doe decided to go from victim to whistleblower. Earlier this year, reports came out that Whitmer was being dealt a lawsuit, and according not only to John Doe but several other unnamed victims, this was a long time coming. Whitmer was your classic predator who systematically groomed his young players before taking advantage of them. Some of the claims made from John Doe were that his coach would take him into the locker room alone and ask him to sit on his lap. He was also asked to massage Whitmer's chest upon request.
Another parent that raised concerns about how he was using his position as coach to really, control the athletes in an unhealthy way.
As your imagination can probably gather, things didn't stop there either, as the victim stated that he was taken advantage of in other ways as well. However, John Doe wasn't the only one to speak out against the former bench boss, as multiple underage players claimed that he would ask them to send photos of their abs online in order to prove their fitness. Whitmer also asked for pictures of other things that we're not going to mention here. But if you'd like to get all of the details, be sure to check out an article that I'll link below. While it might be hard to believe, this was actually only the tip of the iceberg of the whole ordeal, because not only was Whitmer being sued, but also the San Jose Sharks organization as well. Similarly to the Beach incident, there were witnesses that tried to shed light on what was transpiring, but they were silenced or ignored. According to the lawsuit in 2018, the Junior Sharks program supervisor notified the Sharks owners of Whitmer's sinister behaviors, and that the concerns were raised between 5 to 10 times. However, the warnings fell on deaf ears. The lawsuit also claimed that another employee who had spoke up previously was fired after doing so. And for Whitmer, once everything was revealed to the authorities, he was arrested and taken into custody. After investigators were granted a search warrant of his property, they uncovered some pictures of underage kids that were of an illegal nature to have. Whitmer was charged with 30 felony counts of child sexual abuse and 25 counts of possession of child pornography. Drafted 15th overall by Columbus in 2014, Alex Wennberg, throughout his NHL days, has become quite the journeyman, as the forward is playing for his 5th team this season, the San Jose Sharks. However, prior to his short experiment with the New York Rangers last deadline, Wennberg played for the Seattle Kraken. While this is going to sound completely unrelated, I promise for those that don't know the premise, it will eventually make sense. Most of us are familiar with TikTok, the social media platform that caters to your specific interests by sending you short-form videos tailored to your phone screen. And while I'm not a huge fan of the app myself, it's hard to deny that it's made an impact on many users for better or for worse. A subcategory that's formed within TikTok is called Book Talk. It's a place where reading books is fully embraced as a lifestyle. However, within Book Talk is a community that loves a good fan fiction story. Whether it be athletes, actors, etc., this user demographic loves a good fantasy read. Therefore, Wenberg quickly became the object of the niche community's obsession for his, quote, chiseled Nordic good looks, end quote. At first, this wasn't such a big deal as his partner Felicia Weirin seemed to go along with what seemed like harmless fun. Not only did she embrace this, but also the Kraken did as well.
What? Caution, contents are hot. Can't be that hot. Oh!
As Seattle was catering to the community by posting TikToks featuring Wenberg that capitalized on his good looks. One of the creators, Kira Lewis, for example, popularized the catchphrase, "crack my back." She was even invited to attend a home game, where she was shown on the Jumbotron holding a sign that featured her slogan. While it was entertaining for a hot minute, things quickly took a darker turn for Wenberg and his partner, as the book talk community became increasingly aggressive and stalkerish. At one point, the couple's son was even somehow brought into the steamy conversation. This prompted Weirin to speak out on Instagram and to basically say enough is enough. After she said her piece, the Kraken followed suit and removed all book talk content from their TikTok accounts. Once hockey season starts, that means the holidays are just around the corner, and there's no better way to stay hydrated and to avoid a nasty hangover than drinking Liquid IV. With fresh flavors such as cotton candy, rainbow sherbet, and more, Liquid IV has many different products and varieties on hand. Not only does it have 3 times the electrolytes than the leading sports drink, but it also hydrates you faster than water. So whether you're planning to have some drinks over the holidays or just looking for gift ideas, you can support me by using my promo code Alyssa Hope in all caps. This will give you 20% off your entire order plus free shipping. My link will be down below, or you can just fire up the website and plug in my code from there. And now, back to the video. For me, there's nothing like a good true crime story. The investigation, the twists and turns, and of course the best part, getting to see the perpetrator pay for his actions. And it's completely fair to say that back in the early 2000s, the police in St. Louis had quite a case on their hands. Mike Danton, who was about to finish out his first and only season for the Blues, was thrown a pretty large curveball. Just hours after his team played against the Sharks in San Jose, Danton was apprehended by authorities and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. As the police took the forward into custody, the intricate web of deceit and depravity was about to make its way into public consumption. It just so happens that Danton's agent, David Frost, while not directly at fault for the charge, did have a hand in pushing Danton to the point that he got to. Frost's hold on Danton took hold back in the early 90s, when he was just 10 years old. The two happened to meet at Chesswood Arena, which is on the northern end of Toronto. From there, Frost ended up coaching Danton as he played for Toronto's young nationals team. Interestingly, former Maple Leafs head coach Sheldon Keefe was also on the team for the 95-96 season. And while Frost's coaching style seemed to have its payoffs considering that his team, that season, the All-Ontario Championship, his methods were rather extreme, as it was pretty typical for players to vomit during conditioning sessions, and for Frost to berate his team for over an hour after a loss. An unnamed player told the Globe in an article, I'll link below, just how frightening his former coach truly was. Every player on that team was afraid of Frost. He'd pace around the dressing room while leaving some people out, and you'd flinch when he came near you, because you knew he was capable of some sort of physical violence, he said. But even though he appeared harsh, he was still able to form some particularly close relationships with his players. And according to sources, it was typical for Frost to try and gain the trust of players, in particular who didn't have a support system at home. Danton in particular was definitely what you would consider estranged from his family, as he had chosen at a young age to renounce his father's name Jefferson in hopes of breaking away from his past. Danton began to spend increasing amounts of time in the Frost home, which David shared with his wife Bridget. Frost would typically spend the weekends and even school nights over at the couple's residence. Fast forward to the millennium, and Danton had finally achieved his dream, as he was drafted by the New Jersey Devils 135th overall. Frost by this time was not only his mentor and former coach, but also his agent. However, due to the chain of events that would unfold a few years later. Danton's NHL career would be ultimately cut short. Now, even though I alluded to the fact earlier, I wasn't specific on who Danton was attempting to put a hit on. Frost, who had grown to get intolerant of Danton's alleged lifestyle, which included promiscuity and alcoholism, had caused his player to reach a breaking point. Afraid that his agent would report the truth about his personal life to the Blues front office, Danton felt he had no other option other than ordering the hit. On July 16, 2004, Danton pled guilty to attempting to hire a hitman who was actually a police dispatcher. For his actions, Danton was sentenced to 7.5 years in federal prison. However, he was released early on September 11, 2009. On April 10, 2020, as Gordon Stuckless breathed his last breath in a hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, it was a sigh of relief for many who suffered at the hands of the former hockey coach. This story takes us all the way back to the late 1960s. I have to say, while I wasn't alive yet, from what my parents can tell me, it was a fun time to be alive. However, in the most populated city in Canada, things were beginning to take a very dark turn for a select number of young hockey players. Stuckless, who was a volunteer hockey coach and equipment manager at Maple Leaf Gardens, made it his mission to gain the trust of a select number of young boys and the trust of their families by luring them with gifts that included lots of hockey memorabilia. Stuckless strategically weaseled his way into, well, I'll let you use your imagination. Again, I'm going to leave some articles below that go into further detail, but it's also important to mention that Stuckless wasn't doing this alone, as he actually had a sidekick per se in John Paul Roby. The duo worked together by use of walkie-talkies and had their way with several young vulnerable players from 1969 to 1988. It wasn't until Martin Cruz in January of 1997 gained the courage to tell the media his story that Stuckless and Roby were brought to justice. Stuckless pleaded guilty to violating 24 underage boys and was released in 2001 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Cruz, whose childhood was lost to the depravity of Stuckless, ended up calling it quits for good by sadly jumping off from the Prince Edward Viaduct 2 days after his tormentor was sentenced. John Roby, who was initially convicted of 35 charges, was convicted but died of a heart attack after only serving less than 2 years at Kingston Penitentiary. In 2013, Stuckless faced even more charges after more victims came forward. This resulted in another sentencing, this time to a 6.5-year stay behind bars. However, as I mentioned before, Stuckless passed before he was able to serve the entirety of the second term. In conclusion, I hope you all enjoyed this series, and if you enjoyed this video and aren't subscribed, I'd love for you to give this channel a chance. I have tons of content for you all lined up and coming for the season that I can't wait to share. However, if you'd like to see my videos days in advance and without ads, consider joining my Patreon. For the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can receive monthly shoutouts from me, behind the scenes content, and more. Simply click the link below to get started. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.